I'm playing Dragon Age 2, so I'm gonna try not to be distracted.
What's up, everybody? As you heard in the warning from Travis in the beginning, he's in the middle of Dragon Age 2 and got distracted.
People were. I didn't think that was anybody could hear that.
Yeah, I haven't exactly
Oops.
perfected the sharing of audio between the Zoom call yet, so
I had
um,
no idea anybody could hear that. Yes, I was playing a game. I'm still playing a game. I'm always playing a game when we start the show.
yeah.
Hello, welcome to
What's up, everybody?
welcome to Cinema Royale. It is post Christmas, so Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to everybody.
Hmm.
Um, and we're kind of doing a sort of bit of a shorter show today. At least we're going to try to. We always say that it doesn't actually work out. Um, but we're actually going to try to today. We got a few reviews we want to talk to and we want to talk about. And of course, the big one is Wonder Woman 1984, which is, believe it or not, I think we've only had a handful of superhero movies this year. This is the biggest one, obviously. The first one was Birds of Prey, which came out back in, I think, February.
Right.
Robert Rodriguez's We Can Be Heroes, that just came out on Netflix this week. And I haven't watched it yet, and I really
I
want.
actually just watched that. I was wondering if that was even worthy of our show to talk
Tell
about.
me, tell me,
And
how is it?
I literally just watched it before this show. I was going to sit with
Because
my kids.
Khalil reviewed it for us on the site, and I
Right.
got a screener for it. I never got around to watching it.
I mean,
How is it? How is it?
it's a tried and true kids movie. If you're an adult and you're gonna watch it, this isn't one of those movies that's good for adults and good for kids. The performances are silly. The effects aren't great. They even kind of poke fun at the feasibility of some of, like, for instance, the aliens that are trying to take over.
Yeah,
Um, they joke all the time about how their technology seems to be suited for kids to figure out.
yeah,
It's very intuitive. But it's fun. I mean, it's if I was a 10-year-old or less, I could see myself having a lot of fun with it. It builds off of Robert Rodriguez's Shark Boy and Lava Girl universe, I guess you would say.
yep.
Pedro Pascal plays the leader of the heroics, and
They're a
then
really good
alien.
cast.
They do. They do. They have Pedro Pascal, homeboy from I didn't
Yeah,
think I was gonna be talking about this again.
Boyd Holbrook,
Boyd Holbrook. There you go. Who
Christian Slater.
I always confuse with the guy that was in Tron.
Oh yeah, him and Garrett Hedlund are
Yeah,
very similar.
yeah. I'm apparently not good at names today. Yeah, Christian Slater was welcome to see. Priyanka
Priyanka Chopra.
Chopra,
Priyanka Chopra, who, yeah,
who's hard to put words to. What
yeah.
she is, but
Nick Jonas is a very lucky guy.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Not only that, but it's got to be older lady too. But no, it's a good kids movie, but it's not, about 2000 2005 they started making kids movies that were enjoyable by adults too. This is pre that. This is would have been a great kids movie in the 90s when kids
so
can
is
watch it and
this
have a blast, but parents will hate it.
better or worse than Sky High?
Worse, worse,
Okay.
less not it,
Sky High is
less
pretty awesome.
enjoyable.
Sky High is a high bar if you ask me. I
I
like Sky High a lot. So
Sky High, and there was another one that came out around that same time. Sky High was the one with your girl Mary.
Sky High had Mary Elizabeth Winstead
Yeah,
and Danielle Pennebaker.
right, right.
It had both.
And then there was
So
another one that came out. But you know what? It's still a good comparison. It's more like a Sky High, whereas it's a little sillier, a little more goofy, a little less realistic. But I think kids will have a lot of fun with We Can Be Heroes.
nice. So those are really like the only three real superhero movies that came out. And of course, Wonder Woman 1984 is the biggest one.
Yeah,
So
unless you
we're going
want
to
to
talk
count
about
something like the Old Guard, which is kind of
right
peripheral to that. But
superhero
you know,
esque or
yeah.
something like Project Power, but I don't really count those. We're
And
talking
just
about
how
that.
slow this year has been. I forgot Project Power was this year. Like this year, at the same time, it's been in a blink of an eye, and also it's been an eternity. Like
That
you can
was
tell me
part of
things that happened in January, and it seems like they were 10 years ago.
that was part of Netflix's summer of blockbusters. They had Extraction, The Old Guard, and Project Power all in a row. And it was just like,
Right.
wow, Netflix is filling the gap that we're not getting in the theaters. It was actually what they were. It was a good plan by them. It really worked.
Yeah.
All
Timely.
these movies were gigantic hits for them in terms of like viewership.
Hmm.
But anyway, like I said, we're getting distracted already. Already, and
Doesn't
he
take
started.
long.
They didn't even finish talking about the movies we're talking about yet.
We need a
What are we going
producer to
to
keep us
for?
online.
No shit, man. News of the world is one that I'm going to talk about for a minute. What else did we have? We had you had the breakdown a little bit.
Soul,
Soul, or
starring
Soul.
Tim Gordon, our very own WAF member
Yeah,
Tim Gordon.
yeah, it does look like Tim Gordon.
Ever since this movie came out, immediately what I saw was Tim Gordon,
Yeah,
our
and
buddy
we had
as
one more, I
Valentine.
think, didn't we? Have one more.
Yeah, we also had One Night in Miami,
One Night in Miami. How did I forget that one? Jesus
which
Christ, it's going to be in my top 10 of the year probably, and I forgot about it.
yeah, and a
Um,
socially important movie at that.
yeah,
Probably the most. You'd think the Tom Hanks movie would be the awards pick for the week, but I'd really probably go One Night in Miami before News of the
honestly,
World.
three out of these four movies are awards contending movies. The only one that's not is the one we're starting off with, and that's Wonder Woman 1984, which
Hmm.
is notable for us because it's mainly shot here in D.C. and Virginia.
Right.
A lot of it is, and of course, it takes place in the year 1984, so it's a little bit more modern, but it's still, well, at least compared to the first film. Gal
Yeah.
Gadot is back. Gal Gadot is back as Princess Diana. I love the way this movie starts,
Yes.
where it starts in Themyscira during a sort of Amazonian Olympics sort of thing that they got going on, and it's young Diana, and she's even at the young age, she's beating all the other Amazons, which
Right.
I don't know if that means she's awesome or they suck. I don't know what it means,
I went with
but
the former, but yeah, it could be either way.
yeah, I know she's just exemplary. And of course, she basically gets caught cheating. Like she's winning, she
Hmm.
messes up once, and she kind of panics and cheats to try to win,
Hmm.
and she gets caught, and and they give her this lesson about a true hero doesn't cheat, and there's only one way to do this is to be a hero is to be honest, and that's a theme that runs throughout the entire movie,
Hmm.
and it's set in the 1980s. So this is the whole greed is good era. This is like Gordon Gekko, Alex P. Keaton era. Reaganomics. I mean, this is what it is. This is
I know, I
exactly.
know, I know. I just like how
Yeah.
Alex P. Keaton, he makes sense, and I like how he's the second go-to to exemplify greed in the '80s.
Yeah, I mean, because Alex P. Keaton was like
He was that guy.
Gordon Gekko wannabe
Yeah,
Jr. You
he was
know?
Reaganomics personified.
Yeah, exactly. And you got this character played by Pedro Pascal, Max Lord, who is like this get rich quick kind of guy, con man. One of those guys who has like one of those commercials where he's like on the leisure boat,
Hmm.
trying to sell people stuff, and he gets a hold of a thing that grants him the ability to basically grant wishes, and he becomes the thing.
Hmm.
Um, which is a power that he takes to the biggest possible level, granting everything he possibly can to attain power and grant power at the same time.
Hmm.
At the same time, you have Kristen Wiig as Barbara Minerva, aka Sheeta, who is someone who is looked over and passed over by people, ignored. And then you have the return of Steve Trevor, Chris Pine. And I don't want to spoil. If anybody hasn't seen, I'm not going to spoil why he's back because that's like the big secret of the entire movie, why he's back,
Hmm.
how he's back. But he is back in Diana's life, and there's a nice parallel there where she's kind of walking him through the city and the time, and he's the fish out of water, the way she was the fish out of water back in World War I, and
Right.
he's kind of taking her out for ice cream. That was actually those were my favorite scenes of the movie when they're just kind of walking through DC and she's showing him around and he's just kind of in awe. Those are my favorite scenes of the movie
Yeah.
because the rest of the movie to me is just sort of all right. I mean, I honestly this movie is a little bit of a letdown
Hmm.
considering the wait we had for it, and how good the first movie was. This one suffers for a few reasons. One, Max Lord's character doesn't seem clearly defined
Hmm.
very well. His motivations seem to shift all the time. His powers seem to shift depending on what the movie needs. But then there's no real physical threat for her either, until the very last moment of the movie. And when it finally arrives, the the battle they have isn't that impressive. It reminds me of like all of the final battles between the hero and the villain in DCEU movies, which is that they tend to suck. I don't know why that is, what they're doing wrong. Well, I do know what it is they're doing wrong. The villains are never really fleshed out very well.
Hmm.
But this movie really needs her to have a physical threat that she can face along the way. So her big action scene is her taking on a convoy of trucks. I mean, I mean, there's just not. There's a lot that's missing in this movie, and it's not that it doesn't have heart. It certainly does. It has a nice message, but it's just lacking some color.
Yeah, I mean, so that's the main issue I had with the movie. It's a lot of fun. Gal Gadot is an absolute favorite of mine for more than just the obvious reason. She's got such
Yep.
a natural innocence and joy about her.
Yeah.
And Chris
She loves
Pine,
this role. She loves playing this role.
well, yeah, and then Chris Pine has is a perfect complement to it. That's why them walking around DC is so perfect. You know, their chemistry is amazing, and they both have an ease to their roles, which makes it seem so real, and it really honestly kind of puts the rest of the movie in perspective to that. She and Kristen Wiig are great together, yeah, but the big lesson of this movie is that DC doesn't learn from their mistakes. They don't learn their lessons. There's poor CGI throughout the movie, poor to okay, and really when you're talking about a top level superhero movie, okay is not good enough. You have villains that aren't fleshed out enough. You really didn't need two villains, I don't think, for this. You could have done the whole thing without Max Lord. You could have had Barbara find the Dreamstone herself, and then everything goes along as it were with a few small changes. I think they try to, and the other thing is that Max Lord's kind
They
of wasted. He's a major villain, depending on which storylines you're looking at in the DC universe, and he's kind of wasted and
Both of them
kind of
are. Both
silly.
him and
Yeah.
Cheetah. Both him and Cheetah are major DC villains.
Mm.
I'm okay with them having two villains because Max Lord to me isn't villain numero uno. Like I know he's a big bad guy in DC sometimes, especially if you look
Mm.
at like the OMAC stuff from later on.
Right.
But but I don't need him to be. I mean, sort of like if I have Lex Luthor, I need Lex Luthor to have somebody with him.
Yeah,
Like
he
I
needs
don't.
to have a second.
Right, and I don't mind like Max Lord. I kind of see Max Lord the same way. So I don't mind him having a heavy. It's
Right.
just that she needed to become a physical threat an hour earlier.
Yeah.
She needed that a long time ago.
Hmm.
And they spent way too much time with her being sheepish and kind of, whatever, for the entire movie until at the last moment, it's like somebody remembered, well, she needs to fight someone.
Yeah.
Wonder Woman needs to fight someone.
Yeah.
And that was really the wrong way to go about it.
I could have even gone with Max Lord being the main villain, and then Barbara Cheetah not turning bad until like a tease at the end,
Mhm.
because I did like their friendship a lot. I did like what
Me too.
that brought to it, especially
Yeah.
it showed Diana's um, good side, really taking in somebody that's not loved by the world really, and showing her what can be good. And then you could have slowed down the corruption of Barbara and her power to make her the big bad of the next movie or something like that. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's fun to look at. It's fun to watch. I still, I didn't like the look of the gold flight suit in the trailers, and it didn't get any better emotion. But
You
I
see,
think
you see, she didn't stick with it for very long.
no, and you didn't think they would, but for the big, reveal, like I got the feeling that was gonna be the big whoa, check this out moment of the movie, but it wasn't, and it's just the thing about it is it's a fine movie. I'd put it in the middle of the pack. I will watch it again, I'm sure, but it's just unfortunate to see that DC is still not learning from their mistakes. They're not looking at these movies when they're done and saying, okay, what did we do right? What did we do wrong? How do we fix this? Because the CGI thing has been a problem from Jump Street with them, as has the villains. I mean, Marvel and DC have suffered from villain problems, but they're not stopping and saying what did we do right. They're just saying what's the next property we can use, and
Yeah,
that's going to be a problem, a bigger problem as we move forward.
yeah. It's also a little bit long. It's almost 2.5 hours, and it really has no business being that long.
Yeah.
Uh, which is, for someone who's about to go watch it again and of drive-in, I'm like, oh, I forgot about that part.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
anyway,
So let's plug that real quick. Alamo Drafthouse Drive-In is showing it.
yeah, they're showing it tonight at 5, and I think the other one's at like 8:30 or 8:50 or something like that tonight. So yeah, I'm gonna go there at 5 o'clock and check it out again.
Nice.
I like going to the drive-in; it's fun, and I don't mind watching this again. So sure.
Yeah, that you're right though. Once you get, I remember getting to the hour and a half point. I hit pause to go grab a snack. And instead of hour and a half, I was like, wow, this really feels like it should be done in about 10 minutes. But we still have another hour left, and I kind of hate that feeling whenever I watch
Yeah.
a movie and I get that. Um, One movie that wasn't quite as long, Soul, the other one of the direct to major streaming releases that we got this weekend that were originally theatrical. Disney's look at the life of a hopeful jazz musician that's goes
The
to the
first
hero.
black protagonist.
Is it the first for Pixar?
Yeah.
Oh wow. And they seem to be Pixar, to their credit, does seem to be reaching out and diversifying quite a bit. I mean,
Absolutely.
I don't
Coco.
think they have any of the since Coco. They haven't really had any European white princess leads in their films that they've had before. Even the upcoming stuff, it looks like they have an Asian inspired one, another Latin inspired one coming up. So, but Soul, the important thing about it is it doesn't feel diversified. My kids are both half Puerto Rican, half white, but let's be honest, they're little white kids, and they've watched Soul 3 times since it came out. It appeals to everyone that watches it because it's got the same Pixar
I'll be honest.
spirit.
I'm surprised that your kids like Soul
Why is that?
because to me this does not. I mean, I think they simplify it plenty, but it's still a story about a middle-aged man who is in crisis.
Yeah.
Jamie Foxx's character want to be an aspiring jazz musician, working as a music teacher. As soon as he gets his big break, he has a freak accident and dies, and he doesn't want to go to the afterlife, so he ends up in the pre-life, the great before.
Which I've
And
never seen in any movie or TV show before. Nobody ever talks about what happens before we're born,
yeah,
that I can remember.
the great before is not or is it predestination? I believe is what it's called. Um, is where he ends up, and he ends up helping out another soul before she's put into a human body. Number 22, voiced by Tina Fey. She doesn't want to go to Earth at all. She's already beaten down by Earth, and she hasn't even gone to Earth yet, which is I think is a
Right.
pretty funny concept. So what was interesting about this was I thought that this was going to be like another version of Inside Out because it's directed by Pete Docter, same
Mm-hmm.
guy, but it's really not like that. Like the Inside Out like really went through the mechanics of the teenage brain and all this kind of stuff, and and they stayed there. This movie doesn't do that, and I actually found the stuff in the grade before kind of bland. Like
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't. I think it's because they're trying so hard. And this movie deals with a lot of spirituality as well. I think they were trying so hard to not deal with that stuff. They just felt a little bit bland to me when they were in there. It really comes alive when they end up back on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
And what was surprising to me was when they went back to Earth, I said, fuck, I don't want them to go to Earth because I know what's going to happen. It's going to turn into a generic Pixar movie. And it kind of does. It kind of does. But what enlivened it for me was that when they came to Earth, it was able to kind of revel in the music and the culture that was a part of his life and the family and all that kind of stuff that made him who he was. And the movie is kind of about finding your thing, like finding your thing that makes life worth living. And for him, it was his music and his culture and his family and his friends. And seeing that through the lens of a black character in a Pixar movie, I thought really just made it shine. And I was surprised by that. That really
Mm-hmm.
worked for me. And so I was surprised by the fact that I liked it more when it became Earthbound. I didn't expect that.
Well, it is kind of sad. I mean, number one, I'll say I can see what you mean about kids maybe not getting into this, but the thing that's behind the entire movie is jazz, and people don't give enough credit to the fun that jazz brings to things. There's jazz music thrown throughout. Kids love hearing it. It's eclectic. It's all over the place. It's happy. It's upbeat for the most part. So that keeps them into it throughout the movie. I will say it is while there are some really neat takes on the after or before life, like I said, we've never seen anybody really discuss what happens before we're born yet. We know plenty about heaven and hell or reincarnation and all that stuff, but not before. But it does seem like Pixar was trying to tread through a minefield. You know, they didn't want to insult anybody's beliefs, and they didn't want to get into that part. But if you're going to make a movie about this stuff, you kind of got to make a choice, and you got to go to it. Otherwise, what you end up
Yeah,
with is something very
the
bland
movie's
for a
still
movie.
ultimately pretty safe.
Yeah, I mean, and you know, there are some universal beliefs that most people believe in that you can stick with. It doesn't have to be a pulpit by which to expound those beliefs, but you gotta do something. Um, I really like the idea of the before, as you probably guessed it by this point. So I thought that was really interesting. But it was fun to me end to end. I thought Jamie Foxx was surprisingly good as a voice actor, but then I feel like he's been a voice actor and I'm just forgetting it somewhere else before.
I'm sure,
But
yeah. All right.
yeah, so I mean, Soul was a win for me. And like I said, based on my kids rating, we watched it 3 times in 3 days, so that's usually the idea. I will say that they watched the Emoji Movie on end when that came in Netflix as well. So take it take it as you will, with a grain of salt, perhaps. Um,
That's just an indictment on you as both a film critic and as a father.
uh,
So I mean,
well, here's the thing.
you're supposed to teach them better than that.
Until they're a certain age, you leave on what keeps their attention. And that's all you can do. That's
All right,
all you can
all
do.
right, fair enough. All right, what's next?
One Night in Miami. A
Mm,
really interesting type. Oops, I just sent us back to our home screen. There we go. There we
hey,
go, folks. Um, One Night in Miami, a really interesting movie about, I found it funny that Leslie Odom Jr. was in this, who's very famously part of Hamilton. One of the biggest songs in Hamilton is "I Want to Be in the Room Where It Happened," and that's what this movie is all about. It's about one night in 1964. You got Sam Cooke, Malcolm X with Jim Brown, and who else am I forgetting there?
that-
Muhammad Ali, Cassius Clay at this point,
Sam Cooke,
obviously,
Cassius Clay, yeah.
who all, and this is all based on a true story. Apparently, they were all
Well,
hanging out one night in
sort of.
Miami.
Yeah, sort of. It's
Well, nobody knows what happened behind the door, but they did hang out one night in Miami in
yeah.
1964, right? So this kind of
Basically, somebody saw them hanging out, and somebody came up with a story for it.
exactly, and there was a lot of thought about what happened in that room because certain things had come out, like Ali hadn't become public with his conversion to Islam, so he was Cassius Clay at this point. Did that happen then? It's all about them talking about the world they're in and what their responsibilities are, how they can go about exerting change on the world and all that kind of things. Probably most importantly, directorial debut of Regina King,
Yeah,
who was
she's
just,
going to get nominated for this. She might win Best Director for this. It's possible.
I
So I think
mean,
she's almost certainly to get nominated.
how
Um,
how did the little sister from Friday get here? I mean, it's amazing. I mean, from Watchmen to this. I mean, she's on like a straight up meteoric rise 20 years into her
I
career.
mean, look, is there
It's
anything that
amazing.
she hasn't been able to do? I mean, she's already won an Oscar for acting.
Yeah.
I mean,
No, I'm not saying
she's
I'm
won, she's
surprised that
won act. She's done everything. She's won an Oscar for acting. She's won
mm,
Emmys, and now she's possibly gonna get nominated or win an Oscar for directing. It seems to be very little that she can't do,
yeah.
and she does a great job here with this and adapting a stage play, which is
Hmm.
already hard enough, and a story that essentially takes place in a single room, and she's for the most part, and she manages to make it feel dynamic and not like closed in or static like the way some of these adaptations tend to do.
Hmm.
Um, I love this movie because the conversations in it are so relevant and so timely. You're dealing with these four people, these champions of their respective fields, these black men who are also feeling the weight of responsibility because you're at this time of such great social racial change in the world. And what do you do in that situation? Do you just continue to do you owe people anything? Do you owe the movement anything? Or do you just owe them to do your job? Do you just
Yeah.
owe them that? Or do you owe are you expected to do something more? And I think that's one of those things that every black celebrity has to deal with. I think it's something that every black person has to deal with, even on the most minor of levels. I mean, even I feel it to some degree. You know, it's like,
Mhm.
do you owe it to society to use your voice to speak out against things? Obviously, on the site, I blend in my politics all the time. Um,
Mhm.
on my social media, I blend in my politics all the time. But do we owe anybody anything? This kind of reminds me of Charles Barkley back in the day when he was complaining about being a role model. You remember all that? Remember that big
Yeah.
talk about that years ago? It's
Yeah.
kind of like that. And that stuff is, I think, is always going to be there. And I love the conversations they have with this. I love their interactions as friends, but I love their interactions even more when they're enemies, when they're
Mhm.
fighting, because these are all really strong-willed, powerful black men, and they fight and they get along and they fight some more, and they all come out on the other end of this movie different than they were in the beginning. And when you consider who these people are, like Malcolm X and Cassius Clay and Sam Cooke, we know some of their stories end tragically, but we also know that at least in this movie they come a little bit closer to the people that we know them as by the end of this movie. I just think
Mhm.
it's really great.
Yeah. Um, for sure. And so you mentioned Sam Cooke and Cassius Clay, Malcolm X. How do you what do we I thought, for instance, the guy who played Cassius, he was spot on. Like
Eli Gorey,
Eli Gore, there you go.
he's breaking out big time because of this role.
Okay, good. So Aldous Hodge is James Brown. I love Aldous Hodge.
Aldous Hodge is untouchable as far as I'm concerned. He's amazing.
Yeah, he hasn't done anything that I've seen that I didn't like him in.
I can't wait to see him as what, Hawkman in Black Adam. I mean,
That's right.
that's gonna be sick.
Yep. Then you have Ben Kingsley, a deer, which always
Him
throws
too.
me out because I see Ben Kingsley and I'm like, well, that's not Ben Kingsley. As Malcolm X, well acted. I mean, I think the biggest argument you can make for Regina King to pull an award for this is what you said in the very beginning, and that's this is a movie that takes place essentially in one room. Um, that is something that's famously one of the hardest things to do to
Yeah,
have a movie take place in one place, keep it interesting, keep it dynamic, keep it something that you're on your edge of your seat about, and they do that. This is yet another one of those things. Now, granted, it's fictionalized account of something that may or may not have happened in a room, like we said at the beginning. But this is again another moment in African American history in this country that nobody had ever heard about. I mean, even if they just went in there to play cards, these four folks getting together and hanging out in a room is a pretty big deal. I mean, we've seen Watchmen's been showing us this stuff, and it's just more and more of these films, and this kind of goes into the notion of this film. Do you have a responsibility to educate, to further the cause, things like that, where you have a lot of black filmmakers that are making movies like this when it may be more fun or more profitable to make a superhero movie or to make a comedy or something else. But these are the stories that need to be told. So, I mean, I don't think there's any doubt that this is going to be in talks for awards, if not, taking home quite a few
it
itself.
is. I think it's probably one of the top five contenders of the year for either best picture and for best director. I think it's a given.
Right. So, um, the last film we have on our, and we're actually staying pretty close to our 30-minute mark. But
Now I'll
News of the
keep this one
World.
short then, because
What's that? Yeah,
you haven't seen this one anyway.
I haven't seen
You
this one
haven't
anyway,
seen
but
News of the World, which I don't know. How do you not watch the Tom Hanks movie? How do you not
I
have you not watched it?
because I'm still pissed off that I thought it was gonna be a movie about like the making of grocery store trash mags. Because News of the World to me sounds like the National Enquirer. Weekly World News is what I was thinking of. News of the World is what this is. So I thought this was going to be about Tom Hanks playing those guys, finding three-headed babies and aliens. It's not. It's not about that actually.
No,
So
it's not. He plays. It's a western. It's set post Civil War, and he plays
Mhm.
Captain Kidd, whose job is to travel around the country delivering news from around the world to people who are, I mean, during those times, people are working. They don't. A lot of them can't read. They certainly have no way of knowing anything that's going out, that's happening outside of their own little town, outside of their own little lives. And he just travels around telling, reading the news from the world, telling. Basically, he's a storyteller. He's making these into stories for people,
Mhm.
and he comes across a girl whose family was killed in an Indian massacre, and he's kind of forced into it. Kind of agrees to escort her to her only remaining family. This girl doesn't really speak the language. They can't really communicate through words. They have to communicate in different ways.
Mm.
And on this journey, it's this true grit esque journey, where they're crossing dangerous territory and they're facing all sorts of trials and tribulations, not just the land itself, but from people, a lot of them who just want to take the girl and use her for awful reasons. You can imagine the worst. This little blonde-haired girl, they want to take her and use her for terrible things. And it's his job to protect her. And it's a movie where it's one of those movies, and I tweeted this after it was over, and I think I put it in my review too. It's one of those movies that is made better by the fact that we look at Tom Hanks as basically the best person in the world.
Well,
Right?
because he is.
It's yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, he's one. It's one of those movies that relies on that image that he has as like our father figure, this protector. That's what he
Mm.
is throughout the entire movie. He is her protector. But it's also a movie about communication and the way that we talk to one another when we can't really use words. How do we do that? How do we communicate? We communicate through our actions and our deeds.
Mm.
Um, but it's also about stories. And one of the great scenes of the movie has him forced by this uh, company boss, the guy who basically the company owns the entire town, and all the people in the town work for the guy. Um, he wants kid to read from this fake newspaper, which just builds up the guy who owns the town. It's just fake news.
The original fake news, yeah.
Yeah, and kid refuses to do it. Instead, he reads real news about real camaraderie and people coming together and things like that. And the people love it. And of course, the guy who runs the company, who runs the town, does not love it, and that causes them even more problems.
Mm.
But it's about all that stuff, about combating fake news and learning to rely on one another, and telling stories that help each other feel better, and make our lives better. And it's all these things. It's not the kind of movie you would expect from Paul Greengrass, the guy who did the Bourne movies and of course United 93 and Bloody Sunday and
Right, I
stuff
haven't
like
heard of
that.
any gunfights or fist fights since you started talking about this.
There are gunfights in the movie. There's a one really good one actually.
Okay,
Um,
we're good then.
yeah, well, there's only like one, but it's a good one. But it's not the kind of thing. It's a hopeful movie, and that's not the kind of thing we normally get from him.
Mm-hmm.
And he usually it's a different style from him too. I mean, he just did 22 July, and that was about a massacre.
Right.
I mean, this is the kind of things that he does. This is a different style from him. It's not the kind of ultra gritty, ultra neo realism thing. It's not that. It's just different. And I think he does a really good job with it. And Hanks is the guy for it. Of course, they worked together on Captain Phillips a few years ago too.
Mm-hmm.
But I really love this movie, and it's like I said, it's one of those things that's perfect for Tom Hanks. It's a perfect film for him, and he's really great in it. And yeah, and I hope people check it out. I believe it's on Apple TV Plus. I think it's where it's at. So yeah, it's worth looking
Does
at.
Does Tom Hanks have a deal specifically with Apple? Because his last film, the boat movie, that I can't, my
Captain Phillips.
brain's no, the World War II Greyhound, no,
Oh yeah,
what
Greyhound.
Greyhound, it was
God, that
Greyhound.
was this year too.
Yeah, that was this summer. That was Apple TV Plus as well. So
This
he
is
must have
correct.
some
I
kind of deal
forgot
with them.
about that.
I'm telling you, man, this year's been at the same time, a blink of an eye, and also molasses all the way through. Um,
Crazy.
so that's our movies for this week. Before we get out of here, let's just get everybody ready for number one. If you haven't already, if you're watching this on YouTube, do us a favor, like and subscribe down here, somewhere around here below. If you're listening to us on Spreaker or Apple Podcasts, wherever you're listening to us, do us a favor and write a review. Subscribe to it if you haven't already. If you're just downloading them every week,
Definitely subscribe.
subscribe and write a review. It really does help us a lot. It'll only take a minute of your time, and we would greatly appreciate it. And then this week, we're starting to wrap up 2020. Thank God. This Tuesday, we'll be getting together for an extra bonus show we're going to talk about our worst movies of the year, which will be followed up this coming weekend, January, what, first,
Who
second,
knows?
second,
Just sometime next weekend.
sometime next weekend we'll be talking about the best of 2020. So make sure to look out for that then. And every single day, let's just pull up our little closing feature there. Boom. The site is www.punchdrunkcritics.com. On Twitter, you can find us at PDC Movies. At Punchy Critic is Travis, and I am at PunchDrunkJohn. If you have Twitch, make sure you're following Travis at cinematic_enforcer. Any tips and questions if you want to try your hand at writing? We're always looking for good writers, good dedicated writers with their own voice. I'll go to the front of the line, info@punchdrunkcritics.com. Check us out there. And we'll talk to you guys in just a few days with our worst of 2020.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Later.
Later.